Hello there, everybody. Not really sure if I'm live yet. It's always hard to tell that first few moments until you actually appear and people say, I see you. So that's what you can do for me is you can tell me you see me if you actually do see me. And if you don't see me, well, tell me you see me anyway. And we'll just pretend that you see me rather than you actually seeing me. Okay. Okay, so we're just waiting for things to catch up. Thank you all for joining me. Before I kind of get down to the nitty gritty, I'm going to post this link for others who might want to join us. I'm going to post it on my Facebook pages. So if you'll be patient with me while I just do that, don't mean to be rude, just want to get the information out there to as many people as I possibly can. So we have a lot of people here, and so it becomes a lot more fun. In the meantime, you can go ahead and ask away with your questions and get them ready for me in the chat window. In doing so, I do ask that you don't ask questions about your own personal horoscope. This is really just intended for questions about astrology in general. If you have any specific questions about certain aspects of astrology that you've always been curious about, you can please feel free to post them in the comments section in the chat window, and I'll do my best to answer your questions for you. And what do I mean by I'll do my best? Well, you see, the thing is different astrologers are more focused on different techniques, right? And yeah, I'll be the first to say there's probably some techniques that I hardly ever engage with. Of course, we're all familiar, with the standard nitty gritty, certain types of planets in certain places, et cetera, et cetera. But there are a lot of things that different astrologers work with that other astrologers don't really do. And I'm sure I do a lot of techniques that other astrologers don't work with as well. And so that's the reason for that. But if you want to put some things in the chat window over to the side for me to answer, I'm almost done with all of my little posts to all the various areas. There's just one more to go. And then we'll get down to looking at any questions you might have astrologically and try to answer those for you. Okay, I am posting the last one now, and now we're down to talking. Hello, Susie, and let's see who else is here. Can I please talk about the astrological significance of eclipses? That's a really good question. Let's go into that a little bit and explain what's actually happening at eclipse time, because that'll actually help you to understand the dynamics of what's happening. So think of the sun as being related to the Atman, or the soul, okay? And think of the moon as being related to Manas, or our sensory mind, our consciousness. Okay. Now, the path of the sun as it goes from solstice to solstice is like this north-south motion. The path of the moon is about 5 degrees off of that, right? So at certain points, those two paths cross each other. And at the point where the moon is going north and it crosses the path of the sun, that's where the north node, or Rahu, is. At the point where the moon is growing south and it crosses the sun, that's where the south node, or K2, is, right? So generally, what the nodes are the point where your soul meets your consciousness astrologically, okay? And what an eclipse is that point where you're having either a new moon or you're having a full moon in close proximity to one of those nodes, right? And what they generally tend to do is create, well, almost a certain, you could call it a disruption between the communication between your soul and your consciousness, right? And it just gets a little bit, it seems a little bit confusing, but on a certain level, it's a good thing, because it's kind of like, the way I like to describe it is it's kind of like pushing the cosmic reset button, right? And it's not that you're ever disconnected from your soul if you don't want to be. It just feels like that. Things feel a little bit uneasy or uncomfortable or unsettled at those times. And what's actually happening when you're having a lunar eclipse is you've got a full moon in close proximity to the nodes. And when you have a solar eclipse, you have a new moon in close proximity to one of those nodes. So when you have a lunar eclipse, the sun is casting its light on the earth, which is casting its shadow on the moon. So the soul is casting a shadow on our earth-bound incarnation and casting that shadow upon our consciousness. And so at those times we can feel, confused about the reality of things, right? Then when you have a solar eclipse, you have the moon coming between the earth and the sun. So what's happening at that time is the moon, or our consciousness, is casting a shadow on our sun. So we're not able to fully, or it feels to us like we're less able to tune into our soul as deeply as we might like to. So those 2 points, believe it or not, are actually really auspicious times, because what they're doing on a certain level is they make it so hard to connect that it just kind of disrupts the flow, to the extent that you are kind of forced to open up in a certain way. And generally eclipses tend to set the tone for the following 6 months, right? They're like portals of change between one phase of our year and another. And that's really a good way to kind of put the concept of eclipses in a nutshell. I do have an eclipse consultation on my site for those who are interested in knowing a little bit more about how the eclipse is going to impact them personally. And I actually have a special offer in place. If you schedule any consultation, 60 minutes or over, you can choose a course of your choosing. I'll post those courses over here in the chat window for you here in a moment. If you only schedule a half-hour consultation, then you also get a course too, but you only get the Learn the Divisional Charts course. There's no choice with that. You actually get that course rather than being able to choose your course with the 60 minutes or above consultations. If you buy one of my consultation packages, you get all of the courses that I'm going to put over in the chat window. And I'll go over all of this again here in a bit. But just for your benefit, let's post it over here. And then let's see if we can answer any more questions. It doesn't want to let me do that, everybody. So what I'll do is, after I'm done talking, then what I'll do is I'll just post this to the video itself, right? So let me just click the delete button for that. Or maybe what I can do is just post it one by one for you, so you have an idea. Now, that might take too long. I'm not going to make you wait for that. Okay, let's just look at some other questions. Okay, I want to ask why I got wrong prediction about marriage in general. All right, let's go into the concept of prediction, right? No astrologer gives perfect predictions, right? It's not possible. God doesn't want us to give perfect predictions. The universe doesn't want us to give perfect predictions because we're mortals. Now, the fact that an astrologer can give accurate predictions is a pretty powerful thing. So astrology is a very powerful science. But in my opinion, astrology is, whilst it's geared for prediction, it's going to work better when you use it to understand yourself rather than always look at it to determine what's going to happen. Really, astrology is a way of understanding yourself and improving yourself, and then you're less concerned about what's going to happen. Now, I'm not saying don't get predictions. Predictions are good things, but predictions are not foolproof when it comes to astrology. You cannot get a perfect prediction, even if it is a professional astrologer, even if it's the most well-reputed astrologer in the world. Nobody gives perfect predictions, right? So why you got a wrong prediction about marriage, there's so many other factors that can be there aside from the fact that no astrologer is perfect. You may have a not very well rectified birth time. And with astrology, we're more concerned about astrological time than we are about the time that the clock's reading at the time you're born. The time the clock's reading at the time you're born is usually a close approximation to astrological time, but astrological time is more important. So what do I mean by astrological time? Astrological time means are the positions of the planets matching up with the events in your life. And in a nutshell, that's what astrological time is all about. And that's much more important than clock time. So it could be that your birth time was off. There's so many different factors that go into the equation that can make a prediction either go perfectly or it can make it go flat. Okay. So somebody's asking, how do you look at the dignity of Rahu and Ketu in the Vargas? In my opinion, and this is a thing that different astrologers vary on the opinion of, you always look at the dignity of Rahu and Ketu based upon the dignity of the planets that disposit them, right? Aside from that, my own personal opinion on Rahu and Ketu is that Rahu and Ketu don't have their own dignity, right? They take on the dignity of the planet that disposits them. So if they're in Taurus in the D10 chart, then they're going to take on the dignity of Venus. If they're in Gemini in the D4 chart, they're going to take on the dignity of Mercury, right? That's generally, I find, how the nodes work the best, if you're wanting to ask that. So please feel free, everybody, to ask some more questions in the chat window, because I do a lot of talking, so please pardon me, I need some more water. But please put your questions in the chat window. Whenever there's a break, I'm going to let you know about the special offer that I have in place. So for a limited time only, if you schedule in any consultation, you're going to get a course, right? Any consultation. So if you schedule in the half-hour consultation, you get module 1 of Learn the Divisional Charts, right? And that tells you how to work with the critical planets and the critical houses in every single Varga chart, as well as, or rather in every single Varga chart up through the Saptamsha chart, because it's module 1 of the course, and how to work with the Varga deities related to that particular Varga chart. You get that course absolutely free. It's 19 classes, simply for scheduling in a half-hour consultation through my site. If you schedule in a consultation that's 60 minutes or over, then you're going to be able to choose from one of the following courses, and I'm going to put them in the chat window this time. They are Excelling with Rahu and Ketu, which is a 50-video course, the Nodes through the Nakshatras, which is a 29-video course, right? And in addition to that, you can choose to Learn the Divisional Charts if you want. If you didn't do the half-hour consultation, you can still get that with the 60-minute one if you want to. Concrete Prediction with Vimshotri Dasha is also an option. That one gives you 17 videos, teaches you how to work with the concept of mutual agenda and the Baladi and Jagradati Avastas. Jaimini Level 1, you can choose if you want to. That's 44 videos on Jaimini concepts. Esoteric and Therapeutic Secrets of the Nakshatras, which is 27 videos, a class on each particular nakshatra, and Rectifying Birth Time, which is 30 videos long. We'll teach you how to rectify birth time using Vargas and transits. So if you schedule in any consultation 60 minutes or over, you get to choose one of those. Now, there's an even greater offer than that, which is if you schedule in the 3 60-minute consultation package or the 3 90-minute consultation package, you get all of those. You get every single one of those courses, right? And that's a really good offer. Plus, all those consultations are presently on special offer through my site. So you're getting a really good bargain with this. So, but it's a limited time only offer. So if you want to take advantage of it, you really should act soon. Okay. Let's see what else we've got in terms of our questions. And please feel free to pop your questions into the chat window. That's what this time is all about. And I generally come on for about a half hour before my throat gives out, okay? How does a Rahu Dasha go in general? I heard it gives things at the beginning, but takes it all at the end. It can do that. Generally, I would use the word, the flashpoints you want to look for are the antardashas where like if Rahu's in Capricorn, for instance, you want to look for Rahu Saturn, right? Or if Rahu's in Gemini, you want to look for Rahu Mercury. Or if Rahu's conjuncting any planets, you want to look for the Antardasha of that period. And if you go through all your different Varga charts, then and look at Rahu's position in those, then look at those periods for that particular Varga chart. So there's so many different ways to understand how it goes. Long and short of it is, if people go to an astrologer, and I know you're not taking it from this perspective, but if you go to an astrologer and ask them how a specific dasha period is going to be, like if somebody came to me and said, how is my Venus dasha going to be? I can quite literally tell them anything and it'll be right. I can say, oh, well, it will be good, or oh, it will be difficult, and both will be right. So really, it's those antardashas and pratyantardashas that make the difference. Other than that, it's really hard to judge hard and fast rules how every single Varga chart, how every single dasha is going to play out. But yes, the thing of, giving things at the beginning and taking things at the end, it can do that. In my instance, it didn't really give things until a good several years in, right? So it doesn't always work that way. Okay. What do you do when you get a prediction wrong? Go back to rectify your techniques or leave it to God's will? Everybody gets predictions wrong. I'm going to say that again. There is no perfect predictor. There are, like a well-reputed astrologer, and this is not a criticism, and I'm not going to name names with this, said that if a technique is 60% accurate, then it's a really good technique, right? So that's what we're dealing with when we're dealing with prediction. If we expect perfect prediction, then you're always going to find yourself with your expectations letting you down. If you expect perfect understanding through astrology, then you'll probably never be let down because it's really good like that. So what do I do when predictions are wrong? I go back and I'm always fine-tuning techniques because I want to give people the best possible predictions that I can. But after a while, you learn that everybody gets predictions wrong, and there's not really much you can do about it, right? There's not. It's just how it is. It's just how astrology works, right? Okay, so let's see what we've got here. Yeah, I don't do specific placement questions. Being a professional, I tend to do professional work. I need to see the entire horoscope. In addition to that, I also would, being a professional, it's how I support my family. So I can't give it away really, if you understand. And in addition to that, if I told you something just based on those placements, it would be 50-50. And I don't want to do that. I want to give you the most accurate information possible. So please pardon me for not answering that question directly, but that's why I do that. Okay. But let's see what else we've got. Okay. How do I calculate the strength of a planet? That depends on how I'm looking to use the strength of that planet, right? If I'm looking to predict things concretely and I'm using Vimshotri Dasha, pardon me, I almost lost my glasses then what I do is I work with the Baladi Avastas and the Jagradati Avastas, and I use those to judge the strength. The dignity of a planet in that particular capacity will then determine how the planet feels as it goes about fulfilling its agenda and how it makes the individual feel. If I'm looking at things from a Jaimini perspective, then it's just down to the pure dignity of a planet. If I'm judging yogas, I'm looking at planetary strength using Ishta and Kashta, Shubha and Ashubha Phala, and Digbala. When I'm looking at things from medical astrology, I'm using a combination of the dignity of a planet as well as the Shadbala. So it really boils down to what particular reason I'm using the strength judgment for, right? There's so many different ways to look at things in that particular capacity. So I just tend to, based upon what I'm actually looking for, that's what determines that. So once again, schedule any consultation. You get a free course. If you schedule a 30-minute consultation, then you're automatically going to get the Learn the Divisional Charts course absolutely free. If you want to schedule in any consultation, 60 minutes or over, if you scroll up the screen, you'll see all the courses that you can choose from simply for scheduling a particular consultation. And if you schedule in the 3 60-minute consultation or 3 90-minute consultation package, you get every single course, right? So somebody was, and I put the link to my astrological services page in the window. Please, please do, if you want to have a course with me and learn astrology more deeply, please take advantage of this offer. I can't do this all the time, so please do take advantage of it while it's there. Somebody saying, I had understood that dignity does not equate to strength. Dignity equates to strength, but a particular type of strength. Dignity and whether or not a planet is joining another cruel planet or joining the sun, those are called the deep Tadyavastas. Deep Tadyavastas are based upon the dignity of a planet. If a planet's joining a cruel planet as well, meaning what people most normally term a malefic planet, then it's called Vikala or impaired. And if it's joined the sun, then it's called Kopi. And the deep Tadyavastas determine how a planet feels as it goes about fulfilling its purpose to the horoscope. And in addition to that, that's how it makes the individual feel. So for instance, you can have a planet that's not productive in terms of creating things for the individual, but at the same time, that planet can be in a great friend sign, which creates a pramudita avasta, which means delighted. And so then that makes it so that even though the thing's not working for the person's really, in a good space about that, right? Or sometimes you can have a very productive planet, but it's in an enemy sign. So the person's making something happen, but it doesn't make them feel good, right? So these are the ways you can use those different strengths in that particular capacity. All right, let's see some other questions that were here. Okay. Do you think tropical nakshatras can reveal good information? I am a moon on the ascendant native. In my opinion, I prefer sidereal nakshatras. I have never played around with tropical nakshatras. Being that nakshatras are stellar related, it just feels more correct to me to use sidereal nakshatras. That's just my own personal opinion of it. Other people may work with it and get good information for themselves. So it's not me saying people shouldn't do that. And really, when it comes down to astrology, it's not that one approach is right, the other approach is wrong. Right? It just depends on what you're into and what works for you. I think, the techniques that I've worked with using sidereal nakshatras are techniques that are really, really accurate. And that's why I still use sidereal nakshatras. But I think it depends on the person. I've never played around with tropical nakshatras. Okay. Let's see what else we've got. Somebody's asking a question. Which house to look for second marriage in astrology? Okay. A lot of times people like snapshot techniques, which is what that is, right? A person will tend to look at a particular planet as creating something like, oh, well, this planet might create your second marriage for you, or this planet might create your second child all the time. And so then they go looking when they see that planet active, but snapshot techniques are really meant to be followed up with more firm techniques. And a lot of times people don't do that. So I don't really look for, oh, you said which house, right? I really wouldn't look for a specific house for the second marriage. What I would do is know if the person was married already or not, and then look to see if they're going to get married again. It's, that's really a better way and probably a more stable way to determine that, because a specific house will not always bring the second marriage. If the Lord of that house is beat up or debilitated or any number of things like that, then it wouldn't happen anyway. So a better way to do that, rather than looking, in my opinion, for a specific house to indicate second marriage, the better way to do that is to just look to see if the person's getting married again, or see if they have specific yoga combinations for more than one marriage, right? And then see which planets are kind of creating those yogas. And if those planets are strong, look for those particular combinations. Okay. So once again, if you schedule any consultation with me, you get a free course. 30-minute consultation will get you Learn the Divisional Charts Module 1. If you schedule a course 60 minutes or over, you can choose from one of 7 different courses. They're up in the chat window. If you scroll up, you'll see what they are. You get the course of your choice for scheduling a consultation, 60 minutes or over. And some of these courses are like 44 classes long, which means they're over like 66 hours of course material just for scheduling a consultation. Right? There's absolutely no catch other than scheduling a consultation. In addition to that, if you schedule any consultation package, 360 minutes or 390 minutes, you get every single course that I have available for sale through the Academy. Okay. So let's see some other questions here. And please feel free to put some more questions in the chat window. We're running out of questions in the chat window, so please put some more. Can someone change or improve the results of bad planetary placements over time, or is it more a matter of acceptance and aligning with your chart? Well, here's a good way to look at that, right? Let's take, for instance, if a planet has weak Digbala. Like, let's say you've got Jupiter or Mercury in the 7th house, which means those 2 planets would have weak Digbala, right? By focusing on those planets and what they relate to in your horoscope and making them a constant source of attention, you can improve those planets because you're bringing a lot of attention to it. So you can over time, but generally what you're going to find anyway is the way that you're improving those planets is getting to a point of going, right, I'm improving these planets. There's still not perfect, so I have to accept. So there's always going to be a certain level of acceptance in the equation, acceptance and aligning with your chart. It's not about, I often tell people astrology isn't about rearranging your birth chart, right? It's not about, doing a mantra and then having $1 million fall into your lap, or wearing a ruby on your finger and you become super, super rich, right? Astrology is not designed to do that. Astrology just goes, here's the individual, here's their karma, here's what they're here to work through. And because they're here to work through these specific events, these things or these sets of conditions are going to happen in their life. How they respond to those particular things is going to relate to how well they're resolving the karma in their horoscope. That's what astrology cares about. Really, it doesn't, necessarily care if you get super rich, doesn't care if you get married. It just cares if you grow up, right? Let's see what else we've got. I don't do mundane astrology as much. It's not that I'm not interested in mundane astrology. I just find I get so bombarded by requests for consultations that I hardly have time to go into looking at things on the mundane level. I only know one other astrologer who quite often looks into things from a mundane perspective, but they don't really necessarily put it in their videos, and that's Corey Dowds. But he's another good astrologer too. So yeah, that's what I would say. Okay, let's see what else we've got here in the chat window. If you don't want me to go on and blab about marketing everybody, then you have to get some questions in the chat window. So I'm going to once again tell you, if you schedule a consultation, any consultation, you get a free course. Schedule the 30-minute consultation, you get Learn the Divisional Charts, absolutely free. Schedule a 60-minute consultation, you can choose from one of 7 different courses. And if you schedule in either the 3 60-minute consultation package or 3 90-minute consultation package, you get all of my courses, which is quite a lot, right? And guess what? All these consultations are on sale. They're on special offer. As a matter of fact, the 3 90-minute consultation is on special offer for like about 25% off of the price. And that's quite a lot, right? So I highly recommend you take advantage of it if you can. we'll get 30-minute, would do more, but budget tight. Love your enthusiastic energy, your respect for the field, and obvious thoughtfulness. Thank you. That's appreciated. And thank you also for scheduling. What is really your take on destiny versus free will? That's a good question, Alfonso. I really like the way you worded that. Hang on a second. Here's what I think about it, right? I feel this. You can say that this is Michael Reed's opinion on destiny versus free will, and kind of my outlook on astrology, God, and all of those things in general. If God, whatever we choose to think of God as, if we're going to think of God as being omnipresent, then God is within everything, right? If God's within everything, then there can be no separation from God's will, right? So there can be no separation from destiny. But guess what? It's also God's will that we make decisions, because God is within our decisions. God is within us. God is within our will. So really, God and the individual are inseparable, with the exception of one barrier, and that's the individualistic ego, which doesn't mean the ego is negative, because you need it to exist within a body, right? So even the fact that we make decisions, get things wrong, seemingly make mistakes, mess up, have any experience whatsoever, that's all God's will, right? So really, even you taking steps in your life to overcome difficulties in your chart, that couldn't happen if it wasn't God's will. So everything on a certain level is destined, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try, right? It's much like in the Bhagavad Gita, where it's mentioned that, we're not entitled to the fruits of our actions, but that's no excuse for not taking action, right? That really describes a lot, that particular part of the Bhagavad Gita. So that's what I would say about destiny versus free will. Really, it's all God's will, really. But sometimes we have to make choices, and that's God's will too. Okay, that's what I think. Okay, so let's see. And that's really what I think. I probably just preceded in a nutshell. I could go on for hours with that. Okay, got about another 10 minutes, everybody. Do I use the outer planets if they are very close in orb? I tend to judge aspects in a different way. If you take a 30-degree sign and you break it down into 9 different sections, that's right, 9 different divisions, Navamsha, you got it, right? And that's how the Navamsha is determined. So that would be sections of 3 degrees, 20 minutes each, 0 to 320, 320 to 640, 640 to 10, 10 to 1320, 1320 to 1640, 1640 to 20, 20 to 2320, 2320 to 2640, and 2640 to 30. When planets occupy the same 1/9 division of their respective sign and they're aspecting each other, that's when they're making a really tight aspect, with the exception of Rashi aspects. And with that, it's reversed, and I don't want to try to explain that because it's really in depth. I'll give you a hint, right? If you had a planet between 0 to 320 of a fixed sign, and it was aspecting a planet between, it would aspect a planet between 2640 to 30 degrees of a movable sign, right? So you see how the 0 to 320 is impacting the 2640 to the 30. That's what you do with Rashi aspects. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Does one's astrology affect life expectancy of family members? Yes, but don't go there, right? Because you'll find yourself blaming yourself for existing, and that's not really a worthwhile pursuit. We all have been recycled soul numerous times, we can call it that, right? So we formed connections with people over multiple lifetimes. So people that are in your life, like family members, there's unresolved karma between yourself and those individuals. They chose you to work this out with. So it's their soul chose you to work this out with. So your karma and their karma is intertwined, and it's meant to be that way. So it's not that you're at fault. It's not that something in your chart makes a family member die. It's just karmas impacting each other, right? We're not responsible for that. We're not responsible for that. We're just responsible for working on the karma in our horoscope. Yeah, no problem, Alfonso. Thank you. Somebody's asking how I initially became interested in astrology and ultimately became an astrologer. Wow, I've told that story several times. I don't mind telling it again, though. Generally, I used to live with another astrologer, and they used to, and I knew, I was working with astrology a little bit before then, but then I lived with someone who was another astrologer. And the reason I'm speaking about that particular aspect of it is then I moved out of the house with them, and I was teaching yoga, and I became interested to a certain degree in Vedic astrology, and I went to see a particular spiritual teacher. And at that particular time, I had a reading from a Vedic astrologer, and they asked me a couple of questions about my father, and then they said, oh, well, you were actually born a minute and 10 seconds earlier. And I was just really fascinated about that. And I went, wow. And so I really then became really passionate about studying Vedic astrology. And I re-encountered the person that I used to live with and told him I had been studying the Vedic system. And he goes, oh, well, guess what? I've got a waiting list 6 months long. Do you want to jump in? And the rest is history. And that's how it started. Okay. So that's how. All right, let's see if anybody else has any questions. So once again, schedule any consultation, you get a free course, right? If you schedule the 30-minute consultation, you're going to get Learn the Divisional Charts Module 1. If you schedule in a consultation 60 minutes or over, you get to choose your consultation from the 7 that are somewhere up in this thread, and I'll put them in the window of the video when we're done too, just to make it easier. But you can choose the consultation if you schedule a consultation 60 minutes or over. And if you schedule in the 3 60-minute consultation or 3 90-minute consultation package, you get every single course. All of these consultations are on special offer. There's absolutely no catch other than you schedule a consultation, you get a course, or you get all of the courses. And actually the 3 90-minute consultations, about 25% off. It's all part of my Teal Thursday offer, which is my answer to Black Friday, because who wants to go stand in line in a shop and get, beat up and trampled upon, like just to, get a good deal, right? Okay, let's see. Oh, thanks so much, Alfonso. Alfonso was saying, to whom it may concern, I recently had a session with Michael about relocation. I highly recommend it. Thanks, Alfonso. I appreciate that. If anybody wants to put any other questions over in the chat window, I think we've got like a little over 5 minutes left. And I probably have time for another question or two. I'm just going to scroll up the window and see if I've missed anybody else's questions. But I think I may have handled all the questions I felt ready to answer at that particular moment in time. Okay, I don't see any other questions that are here. You can please feel free to put a question in the chat window. Somebody asked a question earlier. Maybe I'll go into this since nobody seems to be asking a question, just in the instance that that person watches this video. They were asking what I thought about Ketu and karma. A lot of times when it comes to the nodes, people like to think of Ketu as relating to previous lifetimes, and Rahu is relating to what we're meant to do with the karma from previous lifetimes. And you can understand it on that level, pardon me, but then it creates a scenario. It's the fizzy water, I do apologize. So you can look at it that way in terms of Ketu being related to past life karma and Rahu being related to what we're meant to do with that karma in this lifetime. But it tends to lead to a person thinking that Rahu is the way to go and we just completely ignore Ketu. And that's not necessarily the case, right? Ketu will also represent a skill, something you're really good at. Well, that is if Ketu's dispositor is strong. If Ketu's dispositor is weak, then it's likely something you tried to be good at, but didn't really get to the level of success that you wanted to. Ketu relates to those things that we tend to seek security in, right? Whether it be consciously or subconsciously. So for instance, speaking of seeking security subconsciously, if somebody spent their entire life imprisoned, when they get out, they may not know how to cope with the external world. And so then subconsciously they seek that reclusion or seclusion that they had when they were, kind of locked away, even though it was unpleasant. So that's how we can sometimes seek security in not such a healthy way. Or sometimes we may just prefer our own company. That's a much better way of working with it. So K2, even though it relates to past karma, it also relates to your inherent response to the conditions of life, how you go about things, your usual approach. Now, we can't stay with the usual approach for the rest of our lives. We need to grow beyond that. So Rahu and Ketu are really one entity. So Rahu's responsibility is to go, I'm going to pull you out of your comfort zone and make you explore fresh territory. Sometimes when you explore that fresh territory, you're going to recognize that, no, this old way of looking at things was really the right way, even though I felt that it was wrong previously. Now I'm complete with knowing that was the correct way for me. Or it may actually show you things from a different perspective and make you recognize that your previous way of looking at things was incomplete. But guess what? If you go too much in the direction of Rahu, things get really, really crazy and really hectic. And then you need Ketu and that security to integrate the experience you're going through with Rahu. And that's how Ketu gives liberation, right? So that's the best way to understand Ketu and Rahu and the karmic interaction between those planets. Let's see what else we've got. I'm going to answer 3 questions and then we're going to call it a day, right? Because these are really quick answers, right? Which divisional chart is most important for inner peace? Depends on what inner peace means to you. If inner peace to you means material comfort, then that can be the D2 or the D4. If inner peace to you means happiness and being content, that would be the D16 chart, right? Because that chart, even though people tend to look at it for cars, it really deals with whatever gets you through life, okay? Because it's the chart of conveyances, what helps to carry you through. So it also relates to happiness. So that's a very important chart for inner peace. What is the general base effect of the nodes transing over the opposite natal nodes? Being at a karmic crossroads, confronting something that you had to confront before. And then when you have Rahu over Rahu and Ketu over Ketu, which is the opposite of what you're saying, then it can quite often mark like a seismic shift forward. But there's always some energy that precedes that can sometimes be a little bit uncomfortable for the individual because it's shaking you out of your karmic comfort zone, so to speak. What is my take on Sati Sati and how one should deal with it? My take on how one should deal with it is to not blame everything in your life on Sati Sati, because Sati Sati is like the Vedic astrology equivalent of Mercury retrograde. Everybody wants to blame everything on Sati Sati. And while Sati Sati can be a difficult period, if your Saturn has a decent Ashtaka Varga, when it's transiting over those signs before your moon, over your moon, and after your moon, then it's not going to be as bad, right? And then you'll likely go, gee, everybody's making a big deal out of, Sati Sati, and really I'm not seeing it as being such a big thing. And that's why. So, that's my take on Sati Sati. The way one should deal with it is just to recognize that it's challenging the way that you perceive things, right? On a certain level, because that's why it's challenging, what you've let go of, your concepts of what you've let go of with your consciousness. Then it's challenging your subjective experience of life when it goes over your moon. And then it's challenging those things that you value when it goes over the second from the moon, right? It's a good way to understand it. But if Saturn has good Ashtaka Varga, it won't really be that difficult of a period. Okay, so in finality, if you schedule any consultation with me, you get a free course, right? You get a free course just for scheduling a consultation. Schedule a 30-minute consultation, you get Learn the Divisional Charts Module 1. Schedule a consultation 60 minutes or over, you get the course of your choice from one of 7 different courses, right? And some of these courses are over 44 videos long. These are really long courses. A lot of hard work went into these courses, and you'll see once you get in there and start watching the videos. In addition to that, if you schedule the 3 60-minute consultation or 3 90-minute consultation package, you get all of the courses. All of my consultations are presently on sale, so you're getting a really good deal. Plus, you get a free course, all for scheduling at the link you're going to see in the chat window here. If you've always wanted to have a consultation with me and you've been interested in taking one of my courses, you should really act now if at all possible, because I'm not going to keep offering this, in such a huge manner, like with the consultation reductions and the courses packaged with them. I'm doing that, primarily because of offering it as part of a Teal Thursday package, which is the lead up to my own version of Black Friday, only I like doing things a little bit different because I'm quirky. Okay. All right. So I'll put that link in the chat window one more time, and I will say good night to everybody. And until next time, please do take the very best care of yourself. You can look for a solar eclipse video coming sometime over the course of the next several days. So bye now. Take care.